Over the past few days I've been looking at New World, the new MMO from Amazon Studios. I haven't given up on my XCOM campaign, but the beta only runs for a few days, so I wanted to give it a try whilst I still could. I promise, I'll be back to making XCOM videos next week. I did make some recordings of my time in Eternum, but having considered it, I just don't feel like it's particularly good content. There's a few reasons for that. Firstly, I was getting a lot of audio bugs, and looking back at the recordings, the sound is off as a result. It'd take a fair bit of editing for me to make this enjoyable for anyone to listen to, but mainly I had to dedicate my time to reading a lot of text and understanding some of the mechanics, and I'm not sure that that's really interesting for someone to watch in sort of an hour-long video or so. I do want to share some final thoughts though. It's been a long time since I've played an MMO. I think the last thing I played was Elder Scrolls Online, which I stopped playing about 3 years ago. I stopped playing World of Warcraft over 11 years ago, and that was really the last MMO I played with any sort of degree of regularity. There've been things in between, things like Neverwinter, Guild Wars, but I never played them to a particularly high level. Never got involved in raids, much in the way of grouping. Thinking about New World, I'm trying to work out how the formula has evolved over the years, and looking at this latest offering, I don't think it has. During the beta I made it to sort of level 10, and I know that's not enough time to actually review a game. I do feel like there's something missing. I've worked out that what's missing for me is a burning desire to play. When I picked up World of Warcraft, I was gripped from the first minute. I'm currently playing XCOM 2, as you know, and Horizon Zero Dawn is something I'm playing on my own time. And each day I find myself thinking about playing those games, and I'm actively looking forward to it. At no point over the last few days have I thought to myself, ooh, I'm looking forward to playing New World today. It's just not been there for me. I think a lot of that comes from the world in which it's set in. Eternum's a colonial setting with the barest hints of magic. This is one of the first decisions the team at Amazon Studios had to make, and it's certainly a novel concept, but I haven't really stopped to consider what this would actually mean for gameplay. There's not enough variety in the game, and over the past 8 hours or so of playing, I've just not seen anyone who looks or behaves any differently to my character. The creatures I've combated along the way suffer from the same issue. We all seem to wield a sword or a spear, and we wear the same clothes in the same drab colour palette. The character creation is, for a game that's released in 2021, it's quite limited, and it feels like an issue for me. There are more faces than a game like World of Warcraft or Guild Wars. It just doesn't have the multitude of settings you'd find in a game like Elder Scrolls Online. The result is that it's hard to find a character that stands out and feels uniquely like your own. That's a bad thing for an MMO. For a role-playing game, it's really important to connect with your character. The combat feels like it's one of the stronger points in the game, and I'm glad to see that we're done with MMOs that rely on tab targeting and then pushing a preordained key combination to finish the creature you're fighting. I'm just not quite sure that there's enough variety in the weaponry, and it's definitely not balanced. Shortly before I stopped playing, I'd used my musket for the first time, and whilst it's fun to have an aimed weapon in the game, the damage and the reload time just stopped it from being viable. Perhaps, maybe if I was in a group it might be interesting, but really it just came down to swapping between the sword and the spear. And I think that's a really important point. The game allows you to choose between light and heavy attacks, but those attacks have little to no weight. I'd knock a creature back only to find that its damage would hit me as soon as the hidden, auto attack cooldown ended. Even though it appeared to be reeled in from a shield bash, I'd take a hit. And since my own heavy attacks get interrupted when I get hit, you just quickly learn to avoid using them at all. You just spam your light attack constantly, which is something that I'm sure my mouse won't thank me for. I think if I were to play New World, I'd be replacing my mouse because of the left click would be destroyed in a few months. The quests are nothing particularly special, and if you've played any MMO in the past, you'll be more than familiar with the old routine of running from one location to the next to kill a prescribed number of enemies or loot a specific number of items from them. And the game still suffers from the old trope that, not every wolf that I killed had a tooth to prove to the quest giver that I'd met the requirements. The quest givers are fully voiced, but the NPCs deliver their lines so devoid of any real interest or humour that I quickly found myself skipping the dialogue. And really, why do I need to read, to pay attention to it anyway when a marker on my compass will tell me exactly where I need to go and what I need to do when I get there? I know that sort of 8 hours in a game is not enough to review it. It's not enough to get to the point where a group is worthwhile and where the game might improve, so please don't take this as an actual review. The game supposedly has a lot of high-end PvP, and the outcome of those battles have an impact on the world of Eternum, to some extent at least. I didn't experience any of that in my short time playing the game. I didn't group, I didn't do any of the dungeons in there. But 8 hours is enough to tell me something. Warcraft handled quests and humour better, or at least it did. Elder Scrolls Online handles combat better. Final Fantasy XIV does weird monsters better. And they all deliver a much more varied and interesting world, and Amazon's new world, which, let's face it, isn't even a particularly interesting name. The game just doesn't feel particularly special. It doesn't stand out in any way, and in 2021, you just expect so much more technically. It looks a little dated, and it feels a little dated as well. I know that MMOs go in for, very basic art. They want to keep the requirements down so they can get more characters on screen. I just don't think it feels any better to some of the MMOs that we've seen over the last 10 years. In my last session, I was absolutely amazed to find that they've implemented a breath mechanic in the game. I started swimming, or so I thought, out to the island where I needed to be, only to find that, there's no swimming mechanic in the game. One of the, basic features just doesn't seem to have been implemented. And the result of that was that although the quest that I had to go to was only 150, 200 feet away from my starting location, all I did was run for 5 minutes to try and get there because I had to take a very specific path across a ford that would get me to where I needed to be. It just feels a little bit, as I say, dated in where we are now. I might be missing out on something wonderful if I give it another few days. I'm not a professional reviewer though, and I don't have the ability to dedicate time to a game that I'm just not enjoying. If you're enjoying New World, more power to you. But on reflection, I'm just not sure it's for me.